Hello, welcome everyone to our roundtable discussion. Today we're going to be joined by 30 students that are going to be discussing and sharing concerns about what's going on at New Tech. And of course, we're all happy to have your concerns and talk about what's going on. And really, this is just for us to see what's going on at New Tech and see what we can improve and all. And yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So this is something we started last year. For those of you who've been a part of this before, basically this is kind of an opportunity for you guys to kind of talk about New Tech, what we're doing, what you like, what you want to see done differently, ideas you have, things like that. We get it on recorded so that we can always kind of go back to it as well. And then your friends and neighbors out in the building also have an opportunity to kind of watch it and see what's going on. And then, they can find you in the building if they need to and go, hey, what about this? Bring this up next time, that kind of thing. So, who wants to start? Sure, why not?
Okay, I kind of want to start talking about the accountability process that we're having with some teachers. I believe that we are teaching our students to turn in things whenever they want. I think when we have a set date to turn things in, it needs to be that date. And I think that's what we need to start teaching some students and also some teachers. So I know there are some new teachers here who are like, okay, I don't want to be too strict on these students. I don't want them to hate me, but also I want them to get their stuff done. Like, we need to start saying, okay, this is your date. This is when you need to turn it in. Maybe even have a grace period, like 1 day maybe, but at the same time, it shouldn't take 2 weeks to turn in a project, especially if the teacher's on a timed schedule. So I think as us students, we need to start being accountable with our actions, turn this in when it says to. And if something is going on at home or something is going on with your life, mention it to the teacher. But if it's just because you didn't want to do it, then that's something that you shouldn't be counted credit for,
You want to take it, Jade? Yeah, sure. So there's already a system to do with that, and that's like the agency points and stuff, and that's like 10% of your grade. So are you saying we try to make that a bigger aspect of your grade, or we just have?
Yeah. Yes, because I have seen students who have gotten full agency credit when they turn it in 3 weeks late, and I believe that there's sometimes an agency doesn't even go towards your grade. It's just like when I've gotten agency points and it has not affected my grade whatsoever.
I think I agree with what you're saying, definitely, that needs to be something that's emphasized. I know this last semester has been the first time I've taken classes at NWAC, and the biggest jarring change is that, oh, if you don't turn something in on time, that's it, that's a zero.
Exactly.
Test grade stuff over NWAC, and so that's something where just shifting from that from the New Tech mindset to that mindset it's jarring. And I think that part of that is because people tend to confuse, oh, well, we're doing standard-based grading, that means you can turn stuff in whenever you want, it's going to get regraded. And I feel like we need to make sure that it's clear. Standards-based grading means that you can redo stuff and improve, but you also still have to turn it in on time. That mentality, I think, is pretty prevalent in the school, that deadlines don't exist.
And that's what I mean whenever I say we need to have a stricter time period for when to turn things in, because there have been college classes where the students turn things in past the due time and they don't get credit for it whatsoever. And so I believe that's teaching them, okay, I can turn things in whenever I want. That's not how it's going to be in college. And if we want to teach kids to be ready for college, then we need to set that into place.
So when you start talking about, I think you brought up more, if it's more of your grade, how much more, right? So, I mean, what do you guys think is quote-unquote fair? Yeah.
We had a specific discussion about this with Mr. Daniels, and he said it should be about 25, and that the collaboration should go down because in the real world, group projects aren't very prevalent. And he said another thing is, he was saying it was jarring even, from high school to college, and the whole point of high school was preparing us for college, and then college is real world. And I think we should get rid of that by emphasizing agency and having cutoff deadlines about that to make us more accountable.
Okay, so a couple of things that I heard there that I want to, from my standpoint, from I think the way we've put this building together, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to prepare you all for adulthood. right? Not just college. For some of you it might be college, but for some of you it may not be college, and all that's good because you're all going to end up as an adult, right? And in the adult world, most certainly deadlines are important. So I think this is a really pertinent conversation to be having, right? You know, I mean, if you guys are saying, you know, we should, as adults, we should consider taking a look at the agency as maybe upwards to 25%, you know, then in essence, what you're telling me, right, and I just want to make sure I understand what you're telling me. What you're telling me is, at the most, if a student, if a learner doesn't get something in on time, then the best they're going to do is a mid-range C.
So I think,
right?
While I do agree that maybe in the future it might be good to increase the margin, I think the best thing we can do right now is just make sure that the 10% we have is in effect. Because like Jade was saying, that's not even the case most of the time. So I think if we make sure, okay, if you turn in late, you lose that 10%, it's still a 90. You can still get an A, but it's on the edge. I think if we can make that consistent throughout the school, but we still feel like there's a problem beyond that, then we can look at expanding it. But I think right now our efforts should be directed to just making sure we're enforcing the policy we already have.
I agree with that. Like, oh, I'm sorry, if you do turn in great quality work and it's late, I think that should be on the teacher to assess that on how it is. If it's meeting all the standards of the project, then okay, we'll talk about agency points and how that is. But if you're turning in something that's 2 weeks late and it's literally done, like it's just 4 bullet points, like nothing's explaining, nothing is meeting the standards, I think then that's when it should start affecting your agency grade and even your knowledge and thinking grade. And as you said about how, as you said, project-based learning, how collaboration is kind of also a big grade. There are some, like you said, you're prepping us for the adult world and how we're going to be interacting with people. But in the sense, some of us are going to be going to college for 4 years and we won't reach adulthood until those 4 years have passed. Prepping us for college is going to be, it should be your main goal. Of course, prepping us for the adulthood is also a good idea, but that's what college is going to do for us. We need to take things step by step instead of jumping one step and then going to another step. Because if I go to college and I have no idea what to do, like, okay, what am I going to do? Because I have been taught that I can go weeks without turning things in, but my professor's like, whoa, you need to turn this in right now, or you're not going to get a good grade. And then I come out of college with like a 2.0 average. That's going to be a huge thing that affects my adulthood. So that's what I think I'm trying to say, and also what Toby's trying to say.
Yeah.
So basically, in conclusion, more emphasis on meeting deadlines and having that reflect agency scores, having that consistently throughout the building.
And another thing Mr. Daniels brought up was you said that whole C range thing, if something happens and they stay in the C range. He said a big part of preparing us for adulthood, if that adulthood is that if that's your main goal, is to make failure an option. Mm-hmm. And that should be like another motivator and make us more accountable.
I think we should definitely take that into consideration, but we should also kind of watch that boundary and kind of keep it balanced, because there are several classes where if you don't get something the first time, like you don't get it turned in or you don't get it right the first time, you don't get a second chance to redo it. And so I feel like there should be an even balance between, yes, you need to have it done, and if you don't get it, you're not going to be able to get full credit or something, but I think the students should always be given a second chance to actually learn the subject. You know, if the deadline comes and you have to get it turned in and it just be turned in and done with, well, if that student didn't learn anything, then what was the point in the first place? So I think there should definitely always be an option to revisit the topic if the student didn't get the information they needed out of it.
I believe you're correct with that, but in the same time, I have dealt with professors, my mom has dealt with professors where if you are late with something, you cannot turn it in again. You know, this is your final product, you're done. So I think with giving students another chance to turn things in, yeah, I do believe that's a good idea, but at the same time, it's probably not going to happen with some of your professors. And there's going to be some professors who are like, you know what, yeah, you can turn it again. But there's also going to be those professors that are like, no, you can't. And if we're telling people all the time that you can turn things in late, that's going to be allowing them to have this mindset. And then whenever they hear that from their professor, they're going to freak out because their grade is going to be affected. So like he said, teaching that failure is an option, that's what we need to do, because if we're not teaching them that, then they're going to freak out when they get to college and they get an F on a project that they've learned a subject in high school and they got an A on.
I think the perfect marriage between the ideas you're expressing is kind of a system we already had, but I think if we're cracking down on deadlines, I think we need to make it clear to the students that we're doing standards-based grading. So maybe if you have an assignment due in a class that's over a specific standard, you have to get it in by that time. Even if you get it in at a lower quality than you would have liked, okay, you've gotten it in, you have a bad grade, but then that standard will come around again. So not that, basically understanding that it's okay if I'm messing up a little bit now, I'll have chances to improve in the future, rather than just saying, okay, this assignment right here, I need to turn in perfect, so I have to push that deadline back. Understanding that deadlines are important, but also that the standards will be revisited and that your old scores are going to be shaped and often replaced by those new scores. So I think making sure that, like she's saying, the opportunity for reassessment is there, but also that you're not using that as an excuse.
Yeah. I'm going to continue on with what you were saying, and I feel like I've heard this a lot where people are talking about how students need to understand things and teachers need to understand things, and I feel like one thing that is a big issue is kind of consistency between teachers, because every teacher has their own teaching style, but standards-based grading and stuff like that needs to be consistent from teacher to teacher, and iCard rules and just kind of PBL and the basic ideas of new tech, and most teachers try for them, but a lot of teachers don't quite grasp the ideas, and I feel like that causes struggles on a lot of students because they're used to a specific way in 6 out of their 7 classes, and then in this one class they can't retake things, or the deadlines are different and stuff like that, and I feel like that really kind of messes with us.
Another part of that we were talking about is I heard a few complaints about new teachers, specifically because adapting to the new sense of learning, and I think that puts the students at a disadvantage because there's no consistency between teachers. You go from 1 hour from PBL and you have your way of learning, and which is new tech and what we like, versus another teacher who came from another school, who's oh, it's the new teacher, so I have to be different around them.
Well, I think I want you to keep in mind too, though, that just like you guys, when you transition into new tech, right, as a student, it probably took you a little while, right? And you as we bring in new folks, as they come, it's going to be a transition for them as well, right? And so it becomes this, how do we continue on as a learning community, right? Knowing that there's going to be different strengths and different things that we have to work on, both individually and corporately, right? And so I think it's important to sort of keep that in mind. I think that the key thing that you are sort of revisiting, and I like that, I like hearing that, is this idea of continual growth, right? Continually trying to figure it out. That's why we sit and have these conversations, right? And so what I think I'm hearing from this group is that we need to maybe put some thought into, maybe over the next semester, right? Both consistent at making sure that what we have, we're following, whether that's the 10% on the agency piece, making sure that we're maybe a little bit more specific from the adult arena of, this is what agency means, this is on this one. I like, Toby, I like kind of hearing what you're talking about, if your choice is to, I want to put forth the best product I can, but I also have this deadline. It sounds to me like in some experiences it might be, well, I'm gonna not turn it in on time to keep making it better, if you will, right? That's one option. But the better option maybe is, let's go ahead and turn in what we got. Because it's standards based, we know that we're going to be able to come back and I'm going to be able to show what I know and what I'm able to do a little bit better next time that standard comes around, right? But the important piece is that yes, I was able to show some of what I was doing, but really meeting the deadline, which is an important adult skill, right? And so I think we've got two things going on there that we can work on. One is that consistency in what we currently have, and two, we need to maybe do some looking into, do we need to put more weight behind that agency piece for maybe the fall of 2019, right? That's kind of what I think I'm hearing in this. So I think those are great conversations.
I think what Jesus said about how some teachers aren't adapting to this PBL lifestyle and how we do things here, I think that can also fall back on the students. I mean, if you see a teacher who is struggling with this, like the adaptation of PBL, then that should be your place where you step in. You say, you know, usually at UTEP New Tech we do this with the like maybe you should try out this. Give them help. Like that could be something that they can go off of. Of course, you know, if you give them advice respectfully, like don't demand that they do this, that can be something helpful. And you know, already Dr. Arbuckle is teaching his staff, you know, this is how we do things. This is what's going to happen. But if we don't have the students also telling them that, or the learners, then you know, it's kind of like a one-side thing.
I definitely agree. I think our new teachers are really doing well in our school. Like they've come in and it's really just kind of like brightened up the culture of our school. You know, I feel like really you're right. I mean, I feel like we should be giving each other feedback. You know, because the facilitators are giving us feedback all the time, and I feel like we should definitely provide them with some positive feedback.
And now culture and our culture as well.
Yeah. And I think a time that we have like regular feedback even would kind of be a sort of thing to implement that would be good, because some teachers do regularly ask for feedback, and in my experience those have always been the best teachers that I've had. And if that could just be something we implement, maybe at the end of each unit or something, we just discuss feedback with the teacher. I have, I think, 1 or 2 teachers doing that, and it tends to improve things rapidly for the next assignment.
Good.
Kind of for the consistency piece.
Yeah.
Jump in, dear. You're gonna have to.
Something.
Let her jump in.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I would like to say about the teachers, I've definitely noticed with the new teachers this year and the new teachers that I've had last year, I get that they do need to adapt into new tech culture, but as they're adapting into new tech culture, you're pretty much kind of wasting a year of students' time with teachers not really understanding PBL and how it's done at New Tech. And I think a great example of that is Miss Peterson. And she went to a tech school. She was at a New Tech school. And I think the way she teaches is amazing. She does great projects. She asks for feedback after all the projects. And so I'm not really sure the best solution to that. Maybe more training, or so an idea that was suggested to me from some other people I was talking to about this, maybe each teacher before they start working here should sit in on maybe a semester of whatever class it is that they're learning. So like if a math teacher is coming in this year they could spend a semester or a quarter sitting in on a math teacher that already works here, so that the math teacher before they even start here can have a grip on PBL and how it's done at New Tech before they even start working here.
So I think on that issue, I really feel like culture isn't a thing that can be taught, but culture is a thing that kind of has to be adapted yourself. You know, when we all came here as freshmen one year, we came here and we were like, wow, this is so different from the middle school we came to. But, you know, we were looking up to our upperclassmen and we were like, well, okay, this is how things need to be done. You know, I feel like we can try to kind of teach the culture to the teachers, but I feel like it's gonna be more of a passionate culture if the teachers are coming in and we're helping them to adapt and the teachers are learning the culture themselves. I really think that, you know, I feel like the teachers are giving like a lot of effort and they are trying, and that as long as we have to give each other a chance, you know.
Exactly.
And I think this is you have to remember, you know, the whole idea behind the genesis of this building is to be a learning community.
Yes.
Right? And everybody has a role in that learning community. And we're talking about feedback, we're talking about assessment, we're talking about training, and you know, all of that happens whether it's you know, a learner, whether it's a facilitator, over a span of time. Right? I think about your time here as a journey over 4 years. Right? And the kiddo that you start out with as a freshman and the kiddo you end up as a freshman, right? And the kiddo you become at the end of your sophomore year, it's a consistent change. And so I think we have to remember that the same thing happens to me as a building principal, right? I am not the same building principal that I was when we started this building 6 years ago, okay? You guys are not the same learners that you started as 1, 2, 3, 4 years ago, right? Our facilitators are, I mean, even the facilitators who have been here as long as I have are not the same facilitators that started this building. Right? I mean, we all learn, we all grow, we all get better, and that's what makes this place special. Right? That's what makes this place special. And so we have to ask, how do we support one another? Right? You're asking, or you're saying, you can support us by taking a look at how we do agency. Right? That's what I'm hearing you guys talk about. I am also hearing you talk about, you know, we can support each other through feedback, right? Getting feedback and giving feedback, and through training, and all those things are happening, right? What you're seeing is that in an organization, in any organization, whether it's a school or whether it's a professional organization or whatever, there is a time factor that's involved in that. Right? And so just like what you're talking about, we need to be consistent on the things that we have now, and we need to look at how do we continue to improve. Right? And I think we have to do that. We're going to continue to do that in all areas that we have that touch the learner experience. Right? And you guys are a key component of that, a key part of that. Every one of you. And everybody who's not here. Right. When I say that, that's what I mean. Everybody who's not sitting in this room but is in this building is still a key component of that. Okay?
If I may add in, I do believe what you're saying is a good idea, but at the same time, if a teacher comes in and views another teacher, that teacher can have a different learning style than other teachers in the building. So if you're going off of what a teacher, like for example, Mr. Nelson doesn't give out study guides before assessment. I mean, he gives you papers that you've done before, but he doesn't give you a set list. But for example, Ms. Tillman did, and she'd give you, it's different teaching styles. And then you adapt to a teaching style that isn't yours. So if you give feedback to a teacher from, you know, learner to facilitator, then that's more passionate, because you're getting like, okay, maybe you should incorporate a study guide, or, you know, instead of just learning, I need to incorporate a study guide, or I need to do this, I need to do that because this is what this teacher's doing and they've been here longer than me. No, it needs to be like, okay, I need to adapt to this. I need to, you know, year by year. And if it does waste a year, then it wastes a year. But they're learning each year that they go, if that makes sense.
I might argue, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think something we do need to be careful of addressing is that I think that viewing a year of adaptation and change as a wasted year, I think that mentality, it can be dangerous. I think that there are things we can do to, you know, cushion incoming facilitators. We can provide feedback to them and help them grow. But I think we have to remember that no matter what we do, it's not like they're going to pop in and be like, all right, they're good. Like, we need to, and I agree with what you're saying. I think having that period of time, we can help them and let them grow. We just need to remember that that period of time will exist, and we can be gracious and gratuitous to them, and we can help them improve, and they can maybe help us improve.
Well, and one of the things that we talk about administratively is, you know, how do we get better on a, I'm going to call it on a semester basis, right, of supporting our teachers and our facilitators and what they're trying to do. And so that's an ongoing conversation that we have a lot between the 3-4 of us when we talk with Mr. Sisson and what we're doing and how we can support, and because what we know is that our supporting the adult learning in the building thus then supports your learning in the building. All right? And so those are some of the things. I think there are some things that maybe learners don't necessarily see that are happening on the backside. Maybe one of the things we need to talk about is there a way that we can be more transparent with the adult learning in the building, right? So that you guys can see, oh yeah, we are working on those things. We are working on that. You don't typically get to see the adult learning in the building, right? And so that's something that I think we can certainly have some conversations about among all the adults, but certainly as an administrative team on how do we help maybe make visible so that we can continue to model for you, right, our learning. What I try to do is I try to model my learning for our adult facilitators so that they know, oh, hey, well, Dr. Arbuckle's still working on the learning process. Maybe we need to extend that and start thinking about how do we do that so that so that we're modeling as adult learners to you, right? And that's not something I've really wrestled with. So that's something we can certainly wrestle with and see where that goes.
I think the most like visible version of like seeing like the school grow like as like adults like on your side is the iCard thing, because it started out with just the trust card and then it wasn't quite working, and so you guys like continually built upon it until now where it still has some problems, but it's like I can sense that it's getting better than like the previous year. And so I see that as like a learning in your side of it.
And so about the iCards, so we were talking about consistency, and I've noticed that some teachers don't carry out iCards consistently. Some teachers will follow the rules that were presented to a T, whereas others just kind of disregard them. And I feel like finding a way to make sure each teacher follows them consistently would be a good idea.
A big part of that we saw come up a lot, and I talked to was consistency between all the teachers should agree upon a system, so then that B's have validity, authority basically, and like legitimacy between all teachers, because if a teacher were to trump, then this means nothing to them.
And on top of that, I've noticed as well that a lot of students, not only based on that, but a lot of students have, I guess, not even felt the need to get an iCard because of that. Like I've heard a lot of students saying things like they're pointless and stuff just because no teacher that they have has started to implement the rules of the iCard system.
Go ahead. And going off of that, I'm applying for my pool now, and even like some students are like, this is pointless, like my teacher still let me do it, will let me do these things even without that card, and the legitimacy like is still there without that card, and I think that needs to be a bigger part is saying, because people are like looking at the rewards we get, sort of, or the benefits are just like, well, I can do all this without the card anyway, so what's the point? So I think if we reevaluate like what exactly is the benefits and what's the point of iCards, then I think that can prove legitimate between not only us as students, but as teachers.
I would like to add something. In regards to...
Sorry, no, sorry.
In regards to the iCard system, making sure that people who have them speak up for them is important. If you have them and your teacher wants to go by their own set of rules, you might want to counter that, of course respectively, but it's best that people who have iCards stand up and make sure that they defend what it stands for, what it means.
I think a big part of the whole motivation process for students wanting to apply for an iCard and get an iCard really falls on the fact that we need to find a solution for when you apply for an iCard, it's going to be another 2 or 3 months before you actually get that iCard. You know, when I've known many people like throughout my years in New Tech that have said, oh, I have an iCard. It just hasn't come to me yet, you know, because I feel like, I know that's up to certain people, but I feel like there's a solution that we need to find for that on getting the iCards to the students. That way they can be in possession of them and be able to have those privileges.
If I might offer some insight into that process, me and Jacob both were in the student leadership team, and I particularly am like very directly involved with the process of getting people iCards. And yeah, at the moment, the responsibility of distributing and producing the iCards has just this year fallen to student leadership because this is the first year of student leadership. And so yeah, that is something that we recognize and realize we really need to streamline the process, because at the moment it can be a month-long gap between application and receiving, not necessarily because it takes that long to process, but just because the process is slow and clunky and inconsistent. And so that is something that, I hope, easily fixable, that we are recognizing and trying to fix. Yeah.
And I also think, like what you said about privileges, getting people the cards, and even people who have cards, looking at the privileges, I think we should reevaluate the privileges that are given, because some people are like, as I said before, they're like, I can do this without an iCard, like it's just that easy. Maybe the people who actually have the iCard should look and see what can be done with the benefits. Like people who actually have the iCard, it's just not coming from like facilitators just saying, oh, this is what you can do, but taking students who actually have the iCards and who worked for it saying, this is what we should be able to do.
I stand firm with the 9th grade evaluation sheet that we have for the trust cards, now iCards. Even though it didn't get me one because my teachers didn't see me as trustworthy in 9th grade, I still believe that it was a great system because it shows that your teacher was able to trust you in the classroom to get on your phone or use your headphones. Now you're just able to, okay, I fit this, I fit that, I fit that. Teacher, please sign this, and then like, oh, okay. Like, no, your teacher needs to sit there and evaluate how's their work in here, how are they with students, are they on focus all the time? Yes, check, send it in. Because that shows, that's holding you accountable for your actions, one, and that's showing, like, and also if your teacher says no to you, have that teacher give that student feedback, like, this is how you can actually get your iCard, and do the steps to do this. That one, that's showing that passionate teacher, facilitated learner that we need, but it's also holding students accountable for their actions.
Do you think there ought to be a different process for various grade levels? Or?
I think I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I think there are, like, you outlined the benefits to the system that I had in 9th grade as well. But I think what students were frustrated with, I think there are two key problems. First, that system put a lot of strain directly on facilitators to individually review all the students, and that can be difficult for them. I think the second part is that system felt to a lot of students who didn't receive their trust card, it felt like there wasn't really an appeals process, and that it was not possible for you to go from not having one to having one. So I think a happy medium might be, I think, starting with a version of that system initially. Like, okay, the teachers delegate, these are the students that we feel will get iCards, and if you don't get one, then you go through a process similar to the one we have now. There's an appeals process. Or if you get one and you want to continue ranking, because I do really like the advancement system, but I do think that at the moment it feels like there's not enough teacher impact. Like, it does feel like I can just go out and I fill these boxes and all right, I'm good to go. So I think the newer system kind of feels like it lacks validity, which is kind of a common theme that I'm hearing.
So,
okay, you can go, sorry.
So maybe a compromise perhaps could be the student fills out the application and then all the teachers of that student talk about it together so that you're not only getting two signatures and then you have one. Maybe after you fill out the application, you have to get all your teacher signatures, or after you fill out the application, the teachers have to get together and have maybe like a weekly or a monthly meeting or something and just discuss every single student that applied. It could be time consuming, but it would hold the teachers more accountable to talking together about, does the student really deserve a gold or a silver iCard?
I think go ahead.
I feel like the problem with that would be that if a kid, like a learner in a class would say, like, to have a bad grade in that certain class but had a good grade in another teacher's class, then this teacher would feel like that kid would deserve it, but then that other teacher would be like, no, this kid just doesn't deserve it, and would not really evaluate them like in a good way.
But then when you don't have the teachers talking, the student could just go to their two favorite teachers, the two teachers they have the highest grade in, and the teachers would be like, yeah, you're doing good in this class, you deserve an iCard.
But then there's also that whole thing where it's like, how is that, not necessarily how he's doing with work-wise, but like how is he doing, like, how is he doing in the classroom? Is he paying attention when I'm speaking? Is he writing down? Is he listening to when I'm talking? Not, is he getting the standards that I'm teaching? Because I struggle in calculus, but I'm paying attention in calculus. So if Mr. Nelson was to say, no, she has a C in there, but I have an A in psychology, that it's not how you do, like, I like that process, but it's not how you do in the classroom. It's just how you are as a person in that classroom.
So like using grades as when evaluating a student's worthiness for an iCard, using grades as an indicator, but not the be-all, end-all.
Yes.
Well, in my experience, I mean, going back to that, thinking about that process that we used to have, my experience with that and our facilitators, and facilitators, adults in general, is it's less about the grade. While that's, yes, it's important, but it's more about, you know, what goes into that. Is the grade where it's at because we're not getting anything turned in, you know, we're not meeting the deadlines, or is the grade that we're doing everything we can, we're working hard? It's just a hard subject for me to understand, right? And those are two very different things. And so my experience tells me that, you know, something like that, yeah, I think from an adult standpoint, it's much, I don't know what the adjective is. I don't want to say easy, but you're able to make some decisions about your perception of somebody based on the behaviors, quote unquote, that they're exhibiting inside the classroom. Right? There's nothing wrong with working hard and getting a C. Right? I mean, that just is a way it is sometimes. There is, and there's just, I'm going to go this direction. If we don't have to work very hard and we get an A and we kind of slough off, well, I think that's a problem, right? Because it's about developing that work ethic and developing that. And so, you know, I think based on some of this conversation, maybe we need to have some thought processes around, do we do something differently for a first or second semester ninth grader versus a first or second semester senior, just because that senior's had 2.5, 3 years of growth on that freshman, right? And so I think those are some great things to talk about and bring up, right? I'm looking at the clock and I've got 2:45, so I'm sure that we are going to do this again. Are you set just about timing, Lacey, or you got something?
So I know that a lot of people in here didn't actually get to speak about what they wanted to talk about. So there is a form in Echo, and we're going to post the video so that everybody can submit a response on that form. But you can put all of your thoughts on there, and student leadership is going to sift through it, look for commonalities, and talk to administration later about what everybody has to say. So
You should probably disable the comments before seeing kids.
Yeah,
But I really appreciate your willingness to come in and share. I think that, again, there are things that make this place special. One of the things that makes this place special is your willingness to come in and kind of put yourself out there and share feedback in a positive, you know, productive way. And so I really appreciate your willingness to do that. Thank you. And I hope that you will continue sharing your feedback in a positive, productive way with not only myself, the admin team, you know, facilitators as we go through the process. Because again, that's how we continue this journey into a learning community, right? Where we're all taking the roles that we have in order to make our own individual and collective experience better. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
there you go.
Thank you all.